Dear journalists, please take your seats. We will start soon. And the topic of the press conference is the results of the local council, or the 5th local council of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, electing the church's senior priest, and the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the first Patriarch of UAOC, Mstislav, Archbishop Makary, Archbishop Afanasy, and Bishop Mstislav, and he is the head of the, Archbishop and Bishop Kirill. So first, before we start, we greet His Beatitude Makary with election as a senior priest of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church. Thank you very much for your greeting. However, the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church has suffered a big loss because His Beatitude Metropolitan Methody has gone to eternity, and according to the statute, the local council has to assemble and to elect another head of church. So on the 4th and 5th of June we have done this, and we have assembled the council in this beautiful Ukrainian house where great events have taken place on Maidan. As Metropolitan, the Metropolitan was on the street, Hrushevsky Street, for the entire night, but he did visit the Ukrainian house, also the Kiev City Council and other premises where people from Maidan were taking rest and where they warmed up. If I were asked then, I would not say that there will be a time when we will assemble here in order to hold the council and to solve our church issues and elect our head of church. This burden has fallen on me as I am the senior, according to, because the senior, according to Heretony, Metropolitan has rejected its honor, but I do believe that we will fruitfully work for the benefit of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church in order to unite the bishops and the clergy and the believers. And as the late Patriarch Dmitry said, the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church should act, not just live, but act. We will try, with God's help, we will pray to the lenient God, and we will fast and pray so that the church acts, not just taking believers from fraternal Orthodox churches, our parishes or believers, but we will broaden, because Patriarch Mstislav said, why are you in the west of Ukraine? Go to Kiev, go to Great Ukraine, and Greater Ukraine is south. It is also Donetsk and Luhansk regions, although there are combat actions now. But I have proposed, I have suggested, and the council has supported me, although not all the members were in agreement with my proposal, but I did suggest that those territories that were already liberated or that were held by the Ukrainian troops need help now, moral help, moral support, prayer, and maybe material support as well, because people are not guilty. Those Ukrainians who are partly, not all of course, but they were assembling and asking for Putin, I think the time has come that people would gather who have lost their residences. And of course, if they cry, then a minority of them would ask for Putin's help. We will help ourselves, our beautiful, good Ukrainians on the territories of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, and I am sure that if what I suggested will be done by the Church, that we build chapels wherever there's a wish, help to rebuild the institutions, I think that they will cardinally change their ideas, and I call upon people, because you know I served there, so that they do not look at the neighboring state, our northern neighbor, but be enamored with our mother Ukraine, because this Ukraine, when we join our forces, it's going to be a glorious, great Christian. It will be a powerful European state, and there will be no other country in the world where all the Orthodox believers unite. Let God help us so. We have prayed in Andriivsk in St. Andrew's Church, and I also called upon to pray in locations. I believe that God will help us. Thank you, Your Beatitude, Makary, and now Andriy Halitsky, Metropolitan of Halych, says. Yes, I want to add to the words of the head of our church. Over these 2 days, yesterday and today, there was a great significant event in the development of our Orthodox Ukrainian Autocephalous Church. It happened so that we had to gather to mark the Jubilee at a council on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the election of Patriarch Mstislav. I think that today his deathless soul watches us when he saw over 500 delegates and guests, different greetings, and I think that he was rejoicing that the cause that the priests have launched. And first of all, in 1989, which was begun by Patriarch Dmitry, who is regrettably now not with us, with Proto-Presbyterian Yerema and Jan Pashula, who is now serving away from Ukraine. And I stress that this was in 1989, USSR, godless regime, but they were not afraid. And then the process of spiritual liberation has started. So I say that 25 years is a very small time within mankind's history, but in the history of a human life, this is a quarter of a century. So even now, we see between the participants in the assembly young priests, a new generation, young generation. Of course, 25 years ago, we had black beards, we were younger, but life takes its toll. And yesterday and today, and I remind you that local council is the highest legislative power in the statute of our church, and it happened so that Metropolitan Methody has gone to eternity, and he himself was one of the participants in the rebirth of our Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church in Ternopil region, where he served in the cathedral in Ternopil, and I was also a priest at Ivano-Frankivsk, but there was a will of priests and we were elected, because a church without bishops is not a church. I'm glad that I had an opportunity for 3 years to be under the omophore of Patriarch Mstislav. And you know that today his spirit is here, because as a prophet he was looking at us in those times, and he was 92 when he was elected. For 50 years he's not been in Ukraine. Maybe not everyone knows his biography, but he is a nephew of Simon Petlura. His mother was a sister of Simon Petlura, and he was among the 10 people who were banned from entering the USSR, but due to efforts of Yuri Sorochik, who was the deputy of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, he was allowed to go back to enter Ukraine, and his entronization took place in October in St. Sophia's Cathedral. But he was saying, you don't recognize yourself, be strong and the world will recognize you. And if he were 20 years younger, maybe today Ukraine would have a united church for quite a long time. But in his testament he said the words of prophetic words, we should unite, but this unification should be clean before God and before the Ukrainian people. So today, when they are talking a lot about the process of uniting Orthodox churches in Ukraine, this is a very pleasant word, unification. Everyone wants to unite now, but there's also the word joining. So our Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, which in the last century and even now, when we have the Ukrainian power, as if Ukrainian power, and today there were some emotional speeches, both from clergy and believers, about the attitude to the suffering church that lost 32 bishops in 1930s, headed by Metropolitan Vasily Pkivsky. They were killed. And 2,000 priests, monks, and nuns were exiled. So there was a second attempt to restore the church in 1942, and Mstislav then was proclaimed the bishop in St. Andrew's Church. So this church is very, very dear to us. In fact, it became a sanctuary of our church, a cathedral where our head of church serves and preaches. But you have seen today, everyone admires its architecture, and guests from all the world come there. But when there's a sermon in the morning and a concert in the evening, when you will have to pay to enter the church to pray. And you know that in 1934, St. Sophia's Cathedral and St. Andrew's Church were confiscated from the Ukrainian Orthodox Autocephalous Church by the then godless regime. So now in the 21st century, when we are talking about unification and spirituality, you have to understand that a museum should be a museum, while church wants a candle, a prayer, and it wants a singular and lonely believer to come in and just pray alone. And today we're witnesses to the prayers by members of our assembly, and I think that today, and the local council, the 5th local council of our church, has drawn some conclusions from the past years, because there were high rises and falls, and of course there was a lot of mistakes and some treason, because there were temptations of different offices. In the tragic 1992, while Patriarch Mstislav was living, there was a so-called unification of the then exarchate of the Russian Orthodox Church with the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church. The Patriarch was in favor of unification, but he said that you should do this with clean hands, and we should show that we are bishops of the Ukrainian Church, and this did not happen. He wasn't heeded, and he, an old person who was a patriarch, he didn't have a residence in Kiev, and this is very strange. While there was a Ukrainian authority, and Mr. Kravchuk has not given him an adobe, and he was wandering between hotels, and he died in Canada with his daughter. And on the 14th of June, we will mark the day of his leaving for eternity. But I think that now we see young priests, monks, our monasteries are being reburned. Since 1990, spiritual church classes and schools are acting, who have from where the new elite of our church has graduated. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And now Archbishop Afanasy of Kharkiv and Poltava. Well, Bertitus, Makarit, and Andriy have said almost everything, but I want to add to their words what pains me most now. Today, our local council was also dedicated to the marking of the 25th anniversary of the election and intronization of the first Patriarch of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, Mstislav I, Skrypnyck. As we know, he was born in Poltava, and it was in Poltava where he grew and was a youth with his grandfather, and it was from Poltava that he and his uncle Simon Petlura went to the greater world, carrying the truth about the Ukrainian people and Ukraine and Ukrainian Orthodoxy, and he did not allow the Ukrainian Orthodox Church to perish. He continued its story over there in America, Argentina, Western Europe. So this holy place, Poltava, for the entire world, is in a very dire strait. Our parish is not, our diocese is not numerous, and we do not have opportunity, financial or other, to restore the house where Patriarch Mstislav was born and wherefrom he went to a greater world. It's now in a terrible state. We have several times put a roof there, but bad weather has opened it again, and even the ceiling has fallen, and we store the exhibits somewhere else. And I do believe that this press conference will wake the interest of the Poltava city authorities, and they will draw and adopt a program to restore this saint place, this holy place, and we plan or we dream to restore it to the state in which it was when small Stepantsy was born. I think that mom and dad and granddad and grandmom have called him so, and we hope that the authorities will help us to restore this museum. This will be a great thing for Ukraine in general, also a great thing that Kiev may do, and I have said so when we laid flowers to the memorial plaque to Simon Petlura in Poltava. I said then that we want to bring our youth up as nationally conscious people. Until now, instead of renaming this street where this miserable house stands, it is still called by the name of Karl Liebknecht, a German communist who has no relation to Ukraine. Same as, for instance, the central street of Poltava is named after Lenin, not after the Ukrainian hetman Ivan Mazepa. And still now, the beautiful and grandiose monument to Ivan Mazepa is not installed there, although it was Poltava residents who made the biggest contribution to this, to creating this monument. If it were there, then the figure of the hetman itself would very positively influence everyone, both residents of the city and guests. And of course, this museum would become a place of pilgrimage for people from Poltava all over the world. But I think that our authorities will think about this and will help our parish and our diocese to rebuild this museum of Patriarch Mstislav. I'll add that if we try, and the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church will try some money to join in. So the word goes to Archbishop of Ternopil Mstislav. Glory to Jesus Christ. Today we saw the 5th local council of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church finish, and Metropolitan Makary and Metropolitan Andrei remembered how they took part in the first Ukrainian council where they elected Mstislav as Patriarch, where they were participants and witnesses to the glorious history of the Ukrainian people. However, the most glorious thing in their lives was that they restored the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, and at the moment the UAOC remains the heir of this sovereign church. Local council today was the voice of the people, and this means they were the voice of God. And of course, yesterday and today was courage and will of all the delegates of the local council, and the majority of voices were cast in favor of Metropolitan Makary, and we had him enthronized at the Divine Liturgy in the St. Andrew's Church, where the seeds of creed were sowed, and it means that every people should have their church, and the church that lives with people remains strong. And senior hierarchs who entronized the Metropolitan Makary as head of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church when we remember why our church does not have anyone as patriarch, we have always asked Mother Church in Constantinople, due to which the apostle-like Prince Volodymyr seeded the seeds of belief and spread Christianity over our country. So we again address to the Mother Church that cares about every daughter church. We understand that Patriarch cannot ask Patriarch for independence, but when we ask Bartholomew, the Patriarch, in the rank of Metropolitan, I think that his fatherly love will heed our prayers. And as far as the unification of churches goes, it should be built on love. And to say that, for instance, the Ukrainian Autocephalous Church is small according to financial opportunities or the number of parishes, but we still want our united church, and our sister churches in Ukraine should openly act openly, but not to tempt and seduce parishes and priests, saying that they are better and we are worse. If there's love between us, then we will have a unified Ukrainian Orthodox Church on the basis of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church. Thank you very much, esteemed Gates. Thank you for finding time for this press conference. And now we'll go to questions from journalists. I congratulate you on your election. And we have more than once heard about unification here, but what is now standing in the way of uniting with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kiev Patriarch? Thank you for your congratulation. However, the Fifth Channel told us that they will discover all the essence of the assembly and the main events. However, they then didn't come, and you didn't keep your promise. And if we promise one another and not do the thing, then we never become united. However, about unification, if the churches speak frankly, openly, and this will be here in your heart, the desire will be in your heart and soul, then this will happen very soon. But you need to be frank. You need truth, because when the Ukrainian people hear that unification and the resolution of the Synod that those who have 20 priests and 30 parishes, they should join Kiev Patriarchate, then where's unification here? I think I won't dictate to anyone, but because according to God's will I am elected, I will try to put our things to order, to do something. As previously Patriarch Dmitry said, we should act, then I will do everything possible for the real unification to come. There's a commission which we formed, composed of 6 people, also people from Kiev Patriarchate. I have an invitation to meet Onufri. Trust in God. You know, he's called his beatitude, and I have become my beatitude today, but I shall I can bow to his feet and say, "Dear Beatitude, please get away from Moscow as soon as possible." And if you make such a step, then the entire Ukraine will applaud you, and I will bow to you. And I will cede my position so that there's a united Ukrainian Orthodox Church. A question from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center to His Beatitude Makary. As we all know, part of Ukraine in the east is temporarily occupied, and there are some Ukrainians there, but there's a lot of Ukrainians there who are in grief and despair. What would be your wise word to them? What will be your advice? Twice I've been in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. I have gone to all the road checkpoints, and the Dean of Lviv, Oleg, with the Drohobych priest have brought there a lot of things to celebrate Easter. I could not go then. I will go there soon again. I will visit our troops. What would I want to tell them? I have told you previously, if all the churches in Ukraine, we should not go there to entice those people to the Ukrainian church. We know that most churches there are with the Moscow Patriarchate, but just simply with a kind and open heart, we should help them. We should meet them halfway and feel their pain, their concern in their way of life that is not easy today. And I would like to address to them as compatriots, because I spent 10 years there. My dear Ukrainians, please change your views in favor of our mother Ukraine, but not in favor of the northern state Russia. Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? No? Thank you once again. Our heartfelt greetings, thanks because you're here. And again, greetings from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Be inspired and have every success. And I wish you dignified lay work, and with God's help, we will be your guests, and we will work together with you if we have some interest in events, and we shall work together and strengthen our mother Ukraine together. Thank you very much.